Good evening and welcome to 365 Days of Stories with Theo Mayer, day 69. Hopefully the finish of the story of Governor Manco and the soldier. As you might remember, the soldier had told this whole story of going down into this cavern that was in the mountains close by to Granada, having seen the army of Boabdil, and had rushed away on this Arabian steed, had fallen off, his arm got tangled up in the reins, and all the rest of this troop of horsemen and foot soldiers had gone out around him, and when he'd come to, his arm was holding the horse. So he went down into the city, was captured by the corporal, and here the story ended. And the governor looked at him in complete disbelief, and so coolly the old soldier told him, that he thought he should wall up every cavern up in the mountains in order to try to protect Granada from Boabdil's army coming back. And when he had finished, the governor asked, and do you have any other advice for me? And the old soldier shook his head and said, no, that's it. And the governor swung his head back and forth from side to side, and he turned to him and he said, I am not going to believe a word of all this that you've told me. Guards, put him in irons, he said. One of the guards went and had shackles with him and shackled his hands behind his back, and as he did so, he felt on the side of a soldier that there was a leathern bag that was almost filled to bursting open with something. And he undid this bag from off of the soldier and took it over the table where Governor Manco was sitting, and he opened it up and emptied its contents onto the table. Now, I will tell you that never was a display of, a bag of pirate's booty, you could say. Never was one so spectacular as was poured out of this bag. Jewels, rings, necklaces, rosaries with crosses made of pearls, and old Moorish gold coins as well. And as the guard poured the contents of the bag onto the table, some of them went spilling onto the floor, and I can tell you there was a great activity that commenced to pick all these things up and return them to the table. And when everything had been gathered together, the friar who was sitting there, you culprit! You squanderer of wealth, where have you gotten this from? What sanctuary or church did you steal these things? From neither the former nor the latter, said the soldier coolly. I was trying to go on with my story when the governor interrupted me. As I was dismounting from the horse, I had felt this pouch along its saddle horn. And when I began my walk, I took it off the saddle horn and I tied it to myself. In fear that it may be lost, I thought that perhaps it was the plunder of this Moor from days gone by when that was the kind of thing that happened. I had not looked into its contents, and I was meaning to present it to you, Governor, so that you could do with it as you wish. governor merely shook his head. He laughed. He said, "Oh my, you and your story. I will tell you, I have a place for you. I will give you a room in the Vermillion Tower. It should be well barred and locked, and not under any enchantment like your story. There you can reside." Now, the guards took him off. The friar got very upset by this and thought that the bag of wealth, well, he began to ask the governor that he could take care of it and return its contents to the church. Surely this has been taken from it. Governor Manco shook his head. He had that leathern bag with all the fortune in it put in his strong box. And he had the Arabian steed taken down to his stables and secured there. Now, I will tell you that through all of this, the demure handmaiden, well, she had stood by, somewhat restlessly, and when Governor Manco had pronounced this sentence on the soldier, she had almost spoken up to try to get him to stop, but the governor gave her a look and she quieted herself immediately. So, soldier, Vermillion Tower, leather bag, strong box, Arabian horse, royal stables. Now, why did Governor Manco do this? You see, there was a robber that had been living in the mountains where the soldier had come down from. His name was Manuel Borrasco, and he had been looting the city, looting people living in the city for many, many years. It was said even that he would disguise himself, or one of the troop would come in disguised and find out where people were going to be going, on what routes some wealthy inhabitant of Granada might be leaving from, and even when provisions were supposed to be coming or going from the city. And in this way, they knew on what roads, at what passes they may be able to rob the people that passed, or the convoys of their goods. So Governor Manco thought that perhaps he had caught the robber himself or one of his band. Now, the story spread through the city very quickly of what had happened. People wanted to come see this Manuel Borrasco for themselves, the Vermillion Tower. And I will tell you, every day people came to look at him. But Manuel Borrasco was known to have a very violent demeanor, very rough and not the pleasant, happy face of the soldier. So people began to doubt this story and began to wonder if the old soldier's words might prove true. Well, some people went up into the mountains looking for this cave. But more was in store. Now, the governor, for a time, was at peace with all this. But then, as word had gotten out, his, old arch enemy, the captain of the guards, rose up and began to complain that the soldier was caught outside of the governor's jurisdiction and really in his jurisdiction, and the wealth, the bag of goods, the prisoner himself, and the Arabian steed should all be in his possession. The captain of guards suggested that he would take care of the soldier and hang him, for certainly, no matter what the case was, his story was too outrageous to be true. And whether a thief or a liar, either way, he should be hung. Now, the friar had gone to the church and had complained to the church that the governor was keeping possession of things that belonged to the church. And so the governor was coming under some scrutiny from the church itself, and the Grand Inquisitor, he got involved and said that certainly the prisoner should be hung by the church itself, and the goods should be returned to the church's coffers. Well, the governor let everyone know that it was fine. Let them come. And supposedly, there was a set day when they would come, which was the Monday following the religious day of Sunday. Governor Manco went to his handmaiden and let her know that she should awaken him very, very early, before the cock crowed. Because even though these people thought they might get the best of him, it would be very difficult to get the best of an old soldier like himself. The handmaiden agreed. Well, I can tell you that next day came, the cock crowed. The governor was still not awake. He finally was awakened from his dreams by his devoted corporal, who had a look on his face of dismay. "He's gone! He's gone!" he said. "Who's gone?" the governor asked. "The old soldier. The old soldier's gone. His cell is empty and the door's locked." The governor came to and asked who was the last to see him. It was the handmaiden. The handmaiden brought him his supper. "Well, seek the handmaiden." Well, this even created more of a disturbance, because when her room door was opened, the bed was made as if it had never been slept in. The governor thought, "Oh my, the two have escaped. In which direction did they go?" And immediately had sent people out inquiring on the roads to see if anybody had seen anything. Well, there's an old man along the way up into the mountains who said that just at daybreak he had heard the hooves of a powerful horse passing by. And as he looked out, he saw a man riding a horse with a maiden in front of him. And indeed, it was a black Arabian steed. They've gone. Well, the governor was, of course, he was dismayed. Now, I will tell you that the handmaiden for some time had been having conversations with the prisoner, and had also been very good at providing him with the best of food and even some wine sometimes. As the grounds were searched, they went to the stables, and sure enough, all of the stalls were filled with the horses, except where the Arabian had been. And in its place, tied to the manger, was an old cudgel with a note upon it. The note said, "To the good Governor Manco, thank you from an old soldier."